Quad leaders are meeting for the crucial summit in Tokyo. Prime Minister Modi said Quad stands for an inclusive Indo-Pacific. Biden said Ukraine war has destroyed the world order. At the World Economic Forum at Davos, India sells stability and growth. Karnataka Chief Minister Basavrai Bommai, speaking to NDTV, says domestic issues will not hurt the state's investments. Flight operations at Delhi airport have resumed after the major disruptions caused by heavy rain yesterday. Several flights were diverted and delayed. Big meetings for the BJP in opposition in the race to July presidential polls. That's the next big political face-off over who will be India's new president. And with monkeypox clusters confirmed in 14 countries, the World Health Organization holds an emergency meeting. Meanwhile, the Mumbai civic body has announced screening measures. Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat, and the big story, the Quad summit has begun in Tokyo. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received by Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida this morning as the second in-person meeting of Quad leaders began. The Quad summit is aimed at further bolstering cooperation among the member nations, that's US, Australia, India and Japan, and discussing developments in the Indo-Pacific region with an aim at countering China. Prime Minister Modi is also set to hold key bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden and Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Prime Minister Modi, in his opening remarks ahead of the summit beginning, said that Quad has a constructive agenda for Indo-Pacific. It will become a force for good. The US President Joe Biden, in his opening remarks, hit out at Russia's war in Ukraine, and he said the Quad has a lot of work ahead. We have a lot of work to keep the region peaceful and stable, tackling this pandemic and next, and addressing the climate crisis is on the agenda, is what the US President said. Well, let's go across to NDTV's Akshay, who joins us from Tokyo. And Akshay, a very, very crucial Quad meeting taking place. And while we know this, this grouping is in a sense to counter China and China's influence in this region, in this particular meeting also we have the war in Ukraine taking place, which is something that the US President spoke about in his opening remarks.
Well, absolutely, and that was expected as far as the US statement is concerned, because we have seen that in the past few months, ever since the invasion of Ukraine began, US President US President Joe Biden has in fact been quite aggressive as far as the entire invasion is concerned. We have seen that the West has been trying to pressure even India to do more about the ties with Russia as far as the business with Russia is concerned. We have started to import Russian oil, and that is something the West is not very happy about. And we can expect certain statements coming out from the other three leaders as far as the Russian invasion of Ukraine is concerned. But the most crucial point will be what exactly India says about the invasion of Ukraine, because certainly there will be certain pressure on the Indian Prime Minister as far as the Russian invasion of Ukraine is concerned. We have seen that out of these four nations, it is only India that has not openly criticized Russia. It is only India that has not, in fact, voted against Russia as far as the votes in the United Nations is concerned against Russia and the invasion that it had started a few months back. So remains to be seen that what exactly is going to be the Indian stand. That is going to be extremely important. But one thing that all of these four countries agree on is to check the growing influence of China in the Indo-Pacific region. We have seen that China is quite uncomfortable as far as the new initiative that was launched yesterday is concerned by the USA, which has been in fact joined by 12 countries. And China in fact said that all of these initiatives are doomed to fail because these are built on a policy that is divisive. So that was clearly an attack by China on the US US's initiative that in fact started yesterday. Also, it remains to be seen that what exactly is going to be reaction of China today, because there are bilateral meetings after the Quad Summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will first be meeting US President Joe Biden, then he will be meeting the Australian Prime Minister and the Japanese Prime Ministers as well. So certainly China is going to be one of the crucial talking point. But one thing US has signaled here from his opening remarks is that while China is going to be the prime focus, it has also not forgotten about Russia and the invasion of Ukraine that still continues right now, the attacks that still continue right now. In the past few months, Joe Biden had said, in fact, that while the focus of US had shifted towards Russia, it has not forgotten about the Indo-Pacific region, which is in fact one of the most crucial regions according to the USA in the entire world, as far as trade is concerned, as far as maritime freedom is concerned, and other freedom of navigations are concerned in the region, especially when we talk about South China Sea, which not just is a problem for the USA but Japan and Australia as well.
Right, Akshay, and as you said, a packed two-day visit of the Prime Ministers to Tokyo. This is day 2 and the Quad Summit is underway. And as you mentioned, there are these key bilateral meetings which will take place after that, with the Prime Minister engaging with all the, 3 other leaders who are there for the Quad Summit. And the crucial one will be with the US President. And as you mentioned, India has so far is the only country that hasn't outrightly criticized Russia and its invasion of Ukraine. In that sense, we've spoken about the human rights and human suffering over there. And so that will be an issue that the US President will be expected in that bilateral to push regarding the Russian invasion. And what key issues will be there for India to push at that bilateral?
Well, India has signaled very clearly from the starting of Quad initiative that the focus of India remains free and safe Indo-Pacific region. India is more focused on increasing its trade. It is more focused on getting investment from these countries, including Japan, Australia, and USA. It is more focused on trade from these countries, as well as technology that India expects to inflow from countries like Japan, Australia, and USA as far as trade is concerned. When we talk about the Quad initiative, also it's important to talk about the Malabar exercise that US, India, and Japan conducts on a regular basis, and these are mostly maritime exercises. So these kind of programs that these countries hold clearly is a signal that these countries are coming together. There's a group that is being formed of these 4 countries, and that has in fact made China quite uncomfortable. We have seen that yesterday, Joe Biden's remarks as far as Taiwan is concerned has irked China, which has said that US should not take the Chinese resolve on Taiwan lightly, because US President had said that if there is a similar of what has happened in Ukraine, then the reaction is also going to be similar of what US has shown in the invasion of Ukraine, which means that US can not only, in fact, provide arms and better investment in terms of defense infrastructure is concerned. It can also, in fact, put certain embargoes if there is an attempt by China to invade or to take Taiwan by force. Because by force was the key word that was being used as far as the statement of US President is concerned. We said that it is going to destabilize the entire region, and that's not going to be a good thing for the world. So China is not happy about the statement that US President, one of the most powerful man in the world, has given, that if there is a similar of what has happened in Ukraine, then the reaction is going to be similar as well. So China has always expected that US adheres to one China policy. That means that China expects US and other countries to consider Taiwan as its own part. But we have seen that US not just has been providing investment, but also providing state-of-the-art defense equipment to Taiwan as well, which has most of its defense equipment procured from USA. So clearly, US and Taiwan relations are very close, but at the same time, US also wants to keep China in check, not just in the South China Sea or in its eastern part of the country, but also in South, in the Indo-Pacific region. US expects India to be a front runner as far as the defense infrastructure in this area is concerned. concerned, and that has been showed by the diamond necklace initiative that India has in fact launched to in fact counter the pearl of strings that was launched by China to create ports in countries like Djibouti, in countries like Sri Lanka, in countries like Bangladesh, to in fact encircle India, and opposite of to counter this is being done by India as well, which in fact is being promoted by all the Quad nations.
Right, and Akshay, you know, while the Quad grouping is a few years old, this is only the second in-person meeting that they're having. Also, the first in-person in 2 years, and you have two new leaders there, Japan's Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister, who, you know, there were a few light-hearted remarks of him having taken oath just a day ago and flying out straight to Japan for this meeting.
Well, yes, it was very interesting, Gargi, because we have seen that the entire Quad initiative, the idea of this entire Quad initiative was of Shinzo Abe, the former Prime Minister of Japan, who in fact, after cooperation in events like 2004 tsunami, I had thought that all of these countries should come together and in fact form a group to counter China's growing influence in the entire region, which is bothering not just India, but US, Japan and Australia as well, as we have been talking about the freedom to navigate in these waters, the freedom to trade in these waters, because China has been stating that it is the maritime boundary of China, and the other countries that are in fact doing trade is violating its maritime borders, which is not acceptable by countries like even India, because there is a lot of oil that comes out from the South China Sea. There is a lot of resources, natural resources that are there. So that is a concern for the Indian businesses, for the Indian government, for the Japanese businesses, for the Australian businesses. So all of them are concerned with the growing influence of China. And when we talk about the new leaders, clearly the most important thing to watch here will be what exactly is the stand of the newly elected Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese. Because when we talk about the Australian elections, it was circling around whether Anthony Albanese will go soft on China, whether it will back down from Quad. However, he had in fact cleared this thing that his focus is going to be Quad and engagement with countries like India if he is elected to power. And now that he is elected to power, we can expect some clarity over stand of the Labour Party Prime Minister in Australia. Gargi?
All right, Akshay, well, let's just listen into what the leaders said in their opening remarks, where the Prime Minister spoke about the importance of the grouping, saying it has a very comprehensive and it's become very effective. Also, the US President there speaking out about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let's listen in.
इतने कम समय में क्वाड समूह ने विश्व पटल पर एक महत्वपूर्ण स्थान बना लिया है। आज क्वाड का स्कोप व्यापक हो गया है और स्वरूप प्रभावी हो गया है। हमारा आपसी विश्वास, हमारा डिटर्मिनेशन लोकतांत्रिक शक्तियों को नई ऊर्जा और उत्साह दे रहा है। क्वाड के स्तर पर हमारे आपसी सहयोग से एक फ्री, ओपन और इंक्लूसिव इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र को प्रोत्साहन मिल रहा है, जो हम सभी का साझा उद्देश्य है। कोविड-19 की विपरीत परिस्थितियों के बावजूद हमने वैक्सीन डिलीवरी, क्लाइमेट एक्शन, सप्लाई चेन रेजिलियंस, डिजास्टर रिस्पांस और आर्थिक सहयोग जैसे कई क्षेत्रों में आपसी समन्वय बढ़ाया है। इससे इंडो पैसिफिक में शांति, समृद्धि और स्थिरता सुनिश्चित हो रही है। क्वाड इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र के लिए एक कंस्ट्रक्टिव एजेंडा लेकर चल रहा है। इससे क्वाड की छवि एक फोर्स फॉर गुड के रूप में और भी सुदृढ़ होती जाएगी।
At the same time, we're navigating a dark hour in our shared history. The Russian brutal and unprovoked war against Ukraine has triggered a humanitarian catastrophe, and innocent civilians have killed in the streets, and millions of refugees are internally displaced as well as exiled. And this is more than just a European issue. It's a global issue. The fact is that if you turn on the television and you'll see what Russia's doing now, it appears to me that Putin is just trying to extinguish a culture. He's not even aiming at military targets anymore. He's taking out every school, every church, every natural history museum, as if to try to obliterate the Ukrainian culture. The United States must and will be strong, steady, and enduring partner in the Indo-Pacific. We are an Indo-Pacific. We are an Indo-Pacific power. As long as Russia continues this war, we're going to continue to be partners and lead a global response. And you know, we're Indo-Pacific power, as I said. We're going to stand with you, our close democratic partners, and we're going to stand for the shared values that and the shared vision we all have.
Welcome back. Telangana Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao is on a national tour in which he's meeting like-minded regional political leaders ahead of not just the general election in 2024, but also another election looming on the horizon, presidential polls which are scheduled in July. Now, the opposition is yet to announce a joint candidate for the presidential election, and regional parties will play a key role in the opposition's contest against the NDA candidate. NDTV's Akhilesh and Nidhi Razdan have more.
BJP President JP Nadda, Home Minister Amit Shah and the party General Secretary Organization BL Santosh, they had a more than 4-hour-long meeting at party President Nadda's residence. They basically did the homework because the BJP is hopeful to win at least 20 seats out of these 57. And in the typical fashion, we have seen the BJP tries to grab extra seats. So in Karnataka, for example, BJP would try to win 3rd seat. In Uttar Pradesh, the BJP would like to win the 8th seat. And they wanted to complete the homework before the Prime Minister returns so that all these names can be put before the Central Election Committee.
In the last few days alone, the Telangana Chief Minister has met Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. He's going to be meeting Mr. Deve Gowda and H.D. Kumaraswamy tomorrow. He's going to go on later this month to Bengal, where he's likely to meet Mamta Banerjee. That will be significant. He's already met Uddhav Thackeray and Sharad Pawar in Maharashtra. So he's met a range of political leaders with the significant exception of the Congress, because KCR is pushing for a non-Congress, non-BJP front, and I think he'd like to see where the chips fall as far as the presidential race is concerned. He's also going to be meeting Naveen Patnaik because he's again important. He's an outlier. He's a fence sitter when it comes to the NDA. And actually all the BJP really needs is either Naveen Patnaik's support or Jagan Reddy's support, and it's sort of home free when it comes to this presidential election. The KCR clearly not keen on involving the Congress, and the Congress, I think, which is dealing with its own internal issues, has not been saying anything about the presidential election and whether they would put up a candidate, whether that would even be acceptable to the Congress at this time, to the rest of the opposition at this time, is another big point. That just last week Rahul Gandhi made that comment about regional parties not having the ideology to fight the BJP, and that's actually upset the Congress's own allies who are regional parties as well. So I think KCR hoping to get in on that sentiment as well.
Welcome back. Let's focus now on the World Economic Forum underway in Davos, and vaccine maker Adar Poonawalla's new pitch at Davos is about the next generation of COVID vaccines, is that he hopes that would be able to block transmission. Here he is in an interview with NDTV's Vishnu Shom.
For more than 2 years, the world has seen the worst pandemic, a once-in-a-century event which has altered the lives of millions around the world. Millions have died, and the pandemic is not really over. One of the groups which has been instrumental in trying to help millions around the world, the Serum Institute of India, the AstraZeneca vaccine, what we call Covishield in India, has had a huge role. Adar Poonawalla with me over here in Davos in Switzerland. Thanks very much for being with us. You know, when we first started speaking about vaccines a couple of years back, the real hope was Covishield, and it still continues to generate so much hope in our country. I just got my booster jab about 2 weeks, just about 2 weeks back. But the question I really want to ask you is, when are we going to be prototyping a vaccine which deals with all the strains of COVID?
Well, you know, that's well put, because the next generation vaccines, given enough time for research and development, should ideally be able to even block transmission.
Right.
What we saw this time around was great vaccines that could prevent hospitalizations and severe disease. But as you rightly said, to deal with future mutant variants and to prevent breakthrough infections. The real research is on now, which does take a little bit of time. And maybe in a year or two, we could see, a second generation vaccine that could prevent transmission also. And that's how you really work toward eradicating or minimizing the spread of a disease.
And are you in talks with groups looking to develop this technology? I mean, are we going to see an Indian second generation vaccine is my question.
I hope so, certainly hope so, but it's still very early. I think we should wait at least a year and we'll know by then. But even the research at the moment is based on combining the COVID vaccines with flu vaccines. And that could be an ideal booster for people to take every year. Where you just have one jab and it takes care of a family of viruses.
Because that's the other point. We've all had our boosters now, but we'll need another booster until such time as there is a next generation drug available. So I mean, to say that we need to have our next booster 1 year later is hoping against hope that it lasts that long, and it doesn't. The technology, I mean, we know the science now much better than we did a few years back.
Well, I mean, if you take 3 shots, the data is very clear that you do have immunity, beyond a year. At least Covishield and the AstraZeneca vaccine has a very good T-cell response, a long-term response, which is why you're seeing, the cases in India and the hospitalizations, most importantly, at a much lower level compared to, let's say, the US or other parts of Europe, where, other vaccines have been used, which are equally good, but they don't have that long-term T-cell response that we're looking at with the traditional vaccines.
We'll talk more about vaccines in a bit, but you're here in Davos because you really are hoping to bring together leaders around the world to sort of be in a position to deal with pandemics better.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one part of it,
So, I mean, I'm hoping to use the platform here and everyone, whether it's the world leaders or the multilateral organizations, to actually draft some sort of global pandemic treaty, which would help the global solidarity of coming together. We all know what went right and what went wrong in this pandemic. And some of the things that went wrong in terms of sharing of raw materials and vaccines, recognizing vaccine certificates, global harmonization of clinical trials and manufacturing, making more vaccines accessible and treatments accessible globally. So these are the kind of things I would hope to establish, where if you had a global pandemic treaty that would address these issues, it would definitely make it easier with a predefined framework for leaders also to explain to their constituents and to deal with other countries in a predefined framework. Now, it may not be enforceable because, in a crisis, a leader would do whatever they have to do to protect their country, and rightly so. But at least it offers some kind of framework and a commitment, like you see for climate change and other sort of global
Are you drafting it, Adar? Have you got a draft which is ready for circulation?
Yes. So I've been working on it, and I'm going to be circulating that at Davos in some closed door sessions as well with some multilateral organizations, and then we'll see how it's taken up forward from there, because it has to be one of those organizations that takes it forward. One individual country can't do it. So let's see how that goes.
I mean, we talk about the science of the vaccines, but has this been a real learning experience for you that, in terms of coordinating the effort to deal with a pandemic, we around the world lacked? I mean, we fell short of our own domestic requirements at a stage. We stopped exports. The UN fell short. Gavi fell short. Different manufacturers had different priorities. The science was different. The WHO was there. They took a lot of time in many cases. So lives were lost, let's face it. We don't know how many, but the process was slow.
Again, because it was a fragmented effort rather than a global coordinated response. And that's what I'm trying to bring here. So let's see what happens.
So let's talk a little bit more about the India situation. Now, we've got Covovax. It's been granted emergency use licensure in India, but it's still difficult to get for adults. It's not there last I checked on CoWIN. Am I wrong? Or
well, I think there's some procedural issues, but I think most of the adults, as you know, have been vaccinated with either Covishield or Covaxin.
Yeah.
So for dose 1 and 2, I don't think there'll be many takers for Covovax. But I think, as you know, it's approved between 12 and 18 and very soon for going down to the ages, down to the age of 2 or 3. So I think, you know, now we need to get the children vaccinated and protected. I think, you know, looking at toward future mutant variants of concern, it's important to vaccinate the children also. So I think that's where India is at the moment, and we've done very well. Our coverage is far higher than most countries. If you look around, you know, I think, what was it, 90%
more
of
than
adults?
that now.
More than 90%. I don't think any country's reached that figure.
No, and our numbers are huge.
Yeah.
So that's good. This is a question we keep getting in the innumerable programs we've done. How do I know a vaccine is safe for my 2-year-old? How would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, a lot of data and safety. I mean, if you look at billions of doses now being used of the AstraZeneca vaccine in adults, we've had extensive studies in children as well for Covovax, which is for children. You know, the AstraZeneca vaccine is for 18 and over. So Covovax has done studies, you know, all over the world. We've done studies in India. And we've even started thousands of vaccinations in India for children. So far, so good, touch wood. So things are looking good.
Let's talk about the other vaccines which, you know, we've discussed in the past. A nasal vaccine. You were, you know, in preliminary trials when we spoke about this more than a year back. Where does that stand?
Well,
does that still have a say potentially?
You know, we sort of slowed down on it because how many vaccines were we going to make given the coverage? But to answer your earlier point, the nasal vaccines have the ability to block transmission.
You're clear about that now.
There's a higher chance of that. And if that is proven to be true in trials, then yes, as a booster, that would be ideal. But the problem with nasal vaccines is, and even when we had a nasal flu vaccine, the uptake wasn't so good because it's very hard to establish a immune response. Because, you know, the IgG, IgA antibodies that you measure, you don't get that when you give a nasal vaccine. But it does build a lot of immunity and can block in your mucosa, preventing the virus from entering your system, and that's really what you need to block transmission.
Just another point, you know, when we're talking about dealing with a global pandemic, the SII has actually invested a great deal of money in a facility where you can really move fast in expediting production. So when you talk about a response, the infrastructure, the hardware and the people who do this actually exists in our country.
Absolutely.
You know, and
so one of the lessons that we learned was that we need to be able to vaccinate our own nation in a matter of 3 months. God forbid there's another pandemic. We can push the button and produce, you know, now we have a 4 billion dose capacity from 1.5 pre-pandemic. And
this is because of the new facility.
Correct. And that's added another 2 billion doses to our capacity. So now we could technically make whatever India needs within 3 months, and then immediately, you know, export and support other nations as well. Now that is the level of our bandwidth, and don't forget, other manufacturers also have scaled up. So India now has roughly a 6 billion dose capacity between all the Indian vaccine manufacturers combined, maybe even 7 billion. So, you know, we are now far better prepared in terms of capacity also going forward.
Let's talk a little bit about inequity in vaccines. That's been a huge problem in the past because we weren't allowed to export. Now we are exporting a lot more. So when it comes to made in India vaccines in other parts of the world, where do we presently stand?
Well, at the moment, as you know, we've got a lot of capacity. And we have been exporting to more than 80-90 countries as of November 2021. We exported a lot even in January and February before the second wave hit us. So we are in a very comfortable position. The African nations are slowly scaling up their ability to vaccinate, but as you see cases going down, the urgency for people to come forward and get vaccinated is dwindling, and that's you know, a problem.
That
because
is a problem.
A lot of people are not even going in for their second dose as a result, and we need to at least complete their primary and secondary vaccinations. So we have to keep advocating and pushing that as we go along this year.
One final question to you. You would have seen the World Health Organization numbers on the number of COVID fatalities in India. We have our own numbers as well. But I think the key point over here that we keep forgetting is that either way the numbers are stupendous, and I think it's just a reminder of what we dealt with. It sometimes doesn't sink in.
Yeah.
How did you deal with this entire thing, knowing that this is something that's going to be out of control? This is something which did get out of control. Did you sleep easy at any time in the last 2 years?
Well, you've been following our journey quite closely, and given the uncertainty that existed, even in terms of being able to access raw materials and things that we would normally take for granted, it was permissions and licenses, raising the capital. To do this, we invested more than 10,000 crores, between our capital and, from Bill Gates and from other countries, and India's support as well. So there were so many sleepless nights and lessons that we've learned. And I feel we're far more prepared. We can, make better decisions, faster decisions going forward. And I just hope we're never in that position again. But if we are, I'll tell you, there is no country that is more prepared than India. I mean, you look at our testing infrastructure. You look at our health systems also, and hospitals and everything. So. We're in a very good place now.
What about fundamental science in making a lot of these vaccines? The SII is known as a manufacturer. Is that an area that you'd also like to sort of get into?
Well, absolutely.
Basic science.
You've got all the new vaccines, HPV, that we're going to launch, which is for cervical cancer in women later this year. Hexavalent. So we are doing a lot of research to combine vaccines. Even new vaccines, we've got our own patents for the pneumococcal vaccine that we made and launched in 2019 to prevent pneumonia in children. That's one of the highest killers of children below the age of 5.
And this is science in India,
yes,
or your
yes,
international?
Yes, absolutely. We filed our own patents. We've got the strains from the US, but we've formulated and made our own vaccine. So we've got a 5-in-1 meningitis vaccine coming up as well. So a lot of the pipeline products that were sort of deferred for 2 years because I wanted to just focus on COVID will now take shape. Even dengue. We've got a dengue.
You'll have a dengue vaccine.
Yes, we're starting trials with the ICMR this year.
Phase 1.
Yes, and I think maybe in 2 years you'll have it.
This will be the world's first dengue?
No, it'll be the world's second dengue vaccine. There's one made by another company as well. But we hope to have a much higher level of efficacy. So let's wait and see how that goes.
That's going to be huge in the India context.
Yes.
Lovely speaking to you, Adar. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
There you have it, Adar Poonawalla, talking among other things about the need for countries around the world to actually come together to ensure that if there is another pandemic, there's a way, there's a structure in place to ensure that that can take place. In Davos, Vishnu Shom for NDTV.
Welcome back. Now, some of India's startups have been laying off staff in recent weeks, indicating that things are not as bright for the Indian startup ecosystem, which leads to the big question, are startups staring at an uncertain future, and is the worst yet to come?
Employees of M-Fine sitting on the footpath outside a telemedicine service startup at HSR layout in Bengaluru after having been laid off, staring at an uncertain future in the middle of a pandemic.
Actually, it is very difficult that all of a sudden we had a plan layoff, and we have a huge amount of EMIs to be paid and day-to-day expenses of a home. So.
In the latest round of layoffs, around 600 M-Fine employees were fired from their jobs, adding to the already massive layoffs by companies like Cars24, Meesho and Unacademy, where at least over 2,000 employees in the last 2 months were given pink slips.
So we have definitely changed our goals for the year. It cannot be only growth. It has to be growing profitably. So we have changed those goals, basis which we have prioritized certain things and deprioritized certain things, which is, as I said, would be happening everywhere in the ecosystem. So we have done that. We are a lot more focused on margin right now.
Some of the startup founders say one of the major reasons for these massive layoffs has been the pressure from the investors on profitability and the efforts to cut cash burn. Sri Vikraman, the co-founder of Games 24/7, an Indian-based multi-game platform which made it to the Unicorn Club this year, says that this is only to be expected.
To be honest, it sounds like the startup story is not real because now finally layoffs are starting to happen, and what is with the unicorn story if all these layoffs are happening? But to be honest, it's just part of the creative destructive cycle that you have with innovation.
Another startup founder opined that the competition was tough in the startup business.
There are risks of talent, there are risks of competition, there are risks of funding. But I guess overcoming all these risks to not only build a big business but also create massive impact is the joy of entrepreneurship.
2021 was the peak of funding for many startups, but from the start of 2022, we've seen over 5,000 employees rendered jobless. In fact, startup companies are now changing their direction to profitability and margin increasing as well. Just like how Mr. Vidit Atre, who's the co-founder of Meesho, pointed out, more layoffs are expected in the coming days. In Bengaluru, with camera person Kumar Shrija for NDTV.
Now, an NDTV exclusive interview in 2019, MC Mary Kom had asked who is Nikhat Zareen after the youngster had rightfully asked for a trial against the magnificent Mary. She was beaten inside the ring and head hung low, went back to Hyderabad. Nikhat today speaks about the controversy and her opinion on hijab and a lot more.
Nikhat, I'll have to ask you, आजकल बहुत चर्चा चल रहा है whether girls should wear hijab in public places or not. What is your opinion about wearing hijab?
I mean, it's totally their own choice. You know, I can't comment on their choices because see, I have my own choice. I like to wear such clothes, so I don't mind wearing such clothes, and my family doesn't mind me wearing such clothes, so I don't care what people talk about me. But if they want to wear hijab and follow their religious things, so it's their personal choice. So I don't have any problem they wearing hijab, because after all it's their own personal choice. So so I'm okay with that.
Nikhat, injuries and disappointments have been a part of your career all through 2019. I know what had happened, and I was there when a very famous boxer asked who is Nikhat Zareen after you lost. You went back to Hyderabad. Tell us about that moment and how you came back after that moment. And if we could show our viewers that tweet the famous boxer who asked who is Nikhat Zareen also sent about her. Yes.
Yeah, I mean in 2017 I got injury. I had to go under surgery, and since then many people used to come and say that कि अब इसका career खत्म हो गया है, now she will not be able to come back. क्योंकि boxing is all about shoulder, and if shoulder is only broken तो फिर क्या ही ये boxing करेगी.
क्या लगा आपको ये tweet देख के?
Yeah, I felt happy that she congratulated me.
But she didn't even shake hands with you after the 2019 bout.
Yeah, maybe because of the frustration, but I forgive that everything. I have moved on from all those things, and now there is no grudges against her. I always respected her. She has been inspiration for each one of us. So yeah, and
आप 4 साल की
and today only I replied her.
Okay.
Because
जब से
I thanked her that कि मैंने आपको ही देख के मैंने inspire हुई, जैसे मैं और मेहनत करूँगी, and I will work hard and I will try to make my country proud as you have done it. So yeah, I tweeted today only.
I'll have to ask you to mark yourself on a few things. I tell you on 10, mark yourself. Your footwork.
Footwork. 9 out of 10.
Okay. Power.
Power. 8 out of 10.
Punches.
Like combination of punches. Yeah, I mean, yeah, 8 out of 10.
Speed.
Speed. 9 out of 10.
My God, you're not giving yourself 10
Because
out of
I want
10.
to sound humble.
Yes, good.
And okay, coolness.
Coolness. Inside the ring or outside the ring?
Both way.
In life?
Nah.
10 out of 10.
Welcome back. Well, monkeypox is slowly becoming the new global concern after COVID.
I'm concerned.
With over 14 countries affected by the cases. As of date, there have been no confirmed cases or even suspected cases of the disease.
That's right, and though most doctors do say there's no reason, for the general public to be too concerned about it, the absolute numbers are very, very low. But having said that, in Mumbai, the BMC has announced certain steps that it's going to take to battle any sort of cases arriving. Even in India, there will be screening of passengers at airports, isolation of suspected cases at designated hospitals, and samples will be tested in the National Institute of Virology in Pune. So BMC in Mumbai, the first to announce steps given this cases of monkeypox being reported in at least 14 countries so far.
And moving on, at the World Health Organization's annual assembly meet, Indian Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia expressed dismay and concern over the body's recent report on India's COVID mortality count.
Right, this is something India has disputed. Now, according to the WHO report, there were 4.7 million coronavirus-related deaths in India. That's 10 times the official figure and almost a third of COVID deaths globally. Here's what the health minister said.
India would like to express its disappointment over the manner in which the report by WHO on all cause excess mortality was prepared and published, ignoring the concern expressed by India and other countries over the methodology and sources of data, setting aside the country-specific authentic data from the statutory authority of India.
Well, Davos sees the involvement of several Indian industrial leaders. The goal over here is not just to seek investment, but also to get an idea of where the global economy is going. A lot of the ideas which are discussed over here actually do ultimately translate into something substantial on the ground. One of India's biggest industrial groups is the Kalyani Group. Besides their work in forging, they are now very actively involved in the defense sector. And Amit Kalyani joins us now for more on this. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, the fact that you are now contributing in such a major way to the Indian Army when it comes to artillery gun systems, how is that a huge step forward for your company, which is, sort of defined forging in India?
So, it fits right into our core competence of manufacturing metallurgical products. Artillery gun is made up of a large number of high-end steel forged and machine products. It's something that we know how to do, we do well. And what we've done is basically an application engineering of our core technology and knowledge into a product that the country needs. And it's also for the first time that there's been an industry government partnership with DRDO in developing this. DRDO was the design partner, we're the manufacturing partner along with the Tatas, and the product has gone through complete testing, including the final testing with the customer.
In Pokhran, which you excelled in.
Which we passed with flying colors, thank you very much. And hopefully this now paves the way for the entry of a made in India world-class, world-beating product in the Indian Army, and then
So
allows
let's-
us to also export these products outside.
Let's talk about the gun itself. It outranges any other gun in the world of its class. It's got an all-electric drive.
Yes.
There were concerns about its weight, but you're working towards that. But the firepower that it affords, actually I can write a thesis on this gun. But
I'm
anyway,
so glad you studied it.
But tell me, what does this qualitatively mean for the Indian Army?
So let me just address the weight issue. The weight issue is a concern when you have two wheels. On four wheels, the weight is distributed across two axles, so it's far lighter. It's less weight per axle. It's more maneuverable. It has more fail safes.
Right.
You know, you get something happens with one axle, it can still drive.
Right.
It can move on its own without a prime mover up to 25 to 30 kilometers an hour for up to 50 kilometers.
Right.
So it gives you a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why it was designed this way. And the all-electric drive also allows you to run, fire the gun without starting the engine. So you don't have a heat signature. So there are many advantages.
5 rounds a minute, right?
6 rounds a minute. And you can fire in zone 7, which is no other gun in the world has been designed to fire in zone 7. But I think besides that, it will give the Indian forces the confidence that they have a product which is made in India, made for them, and can be modified for their needs.
And tested.
Massively. But please also understand that we're at the beginning of the exploitation cycle of this product. That means for the next 10 to 15 years, we can keep upgrading this product.
Right.
Now it's a 155-52. It can become a 155-55. 155-58, which will enhance its range even further.
Let's talk about shells though. How dependent are you as a gun manufacturer on world-class quality shells being manufactured in India? The gun itself is not enough.
We are not the user. The shell is actually the issue of the user because they are going to fire it. But of course, our product is only as good as what you put through it. Okay, so obviously, and I think everybody in the system is well recognizing this fact, and it's not rocket science. I'm sure we can easily do this.
Right, and it's a question of quality.
It's a question of quality, it's a question of systems and processes, and this will happen.
But you know, what really interests me about your group and your foray into defense is that this exemplifies Atmanirbharta in defense, right? It's not just import substitution.
No.
It's not just political rhetoric. No. It's actual Indians working on an Indian gun system using technology which you have literally forged for decades.
And making something that's the best in the world. And we have to give compliments to DRDO and to all the people involved in this program because they really thought out of the box, didn't take something and modify it and make it for the Indian market, but really ab initio, and we've worked with them closely from the beginning of the program. And it's a matter of great pride that we've now reached here. It's been a trial by fire, but I think we've reached the, let's say the light at the end of the tunnel is visible. And I hope that this will really boost the morale of the system to say that we now have at least something we can rely on which is made in India and will help us going forward.
Let's also talk about high mobility vehicles. What you're developing for use for the Indian Army, which has also been tested in the Ladakh region. Four-wheel drive vehicles which are heavily armored, can carry up to 10 soldiers, I believe, right?
And they are Stanag level 3, including under hull and side blast of 50 kilograms. And a side blast of 50 kilogram is pretty substantial. And I think the whole doctrine in terms of transporting troops has changed from transporting 40-50 troops at a time to a much smaller number because it reduces risk. And I think that's how it's practiced worldwide, and we're moving towards that. I think the fact is that you're seeing a dramatic change in the way assets are used. So I think that's another product which we are already producing and supplying. We've already shipped. I think
you've received orders. Right?
We've received orders. We've shipped also.
How many orders have you received so far?
I think 36 plus 18, 54.
Right. So it's an initial order which has been placed. And the system itself can be upgraded. I mean, it can be weaponized in a very big way.
Oh yeah, it has a turret which you can put on it, which can carry an LMG, which can have multiple different things, and you can operate it by sitting inside with a remote control weapon station.
Okay, last couple of questions. What are some of the other key defense technologies that you're going to be looking at, or are you going to just keep on working with some of the key technologies which you've already developed?
So look, I don't think we are going to try to do everything for everyone. Our focus is in things which are where our core competence is used. So in things which are land system based, artillery based. We have multiple new artillery platforms. We have a small light artillery platform also, which is a 105 mounted on a truck, which is our own ultra light product, which is one which we have got. Then we've got a MGS, which is a mounted gun system, 155 45 and 155 52 mounted on our own vehicle, which is a 6x6. Again, a good product. So we have these products, and then some others that we are working on.
Excellent. Well, it's been wonderful speaking to you, and it's great to hear from a defense manufacturer, an Indian defense manufacturer talking about state of the art. That really helps a great deal in terms of where we are going with our defense, and I hope things work out over here for you in your talks in Davos. Thank you very much.